That was something that happened during my college years. One day, I heard the siren of an ambulance. The sound was getting closer, and it kept ringing in my ears. It was so loud that it gave me a headache and made me feel nauseous. I tried to open my eyes, but they felt heavy, like I couldn't lift them. But eventually, I managed to open them. But all I saw was pitch blackness in front of me. It was like being trapped in a strange space. Suddenly, a glaring light broke through the darkness, and a tall figure appeared before me, seemingly looking down at me, but I couldn't recognize who it was. The person didn't say anything, and the figure seemed to move closer and farther away, almost like the whole bed was swaying. I felt intense dizziness and vertigo, and I tried to sit up to see what was happening. But I was gently restrained, unable to get up. When I tried to struggle again, I realized I couldn't muster any strength. It was like I was firmly pinned to the bed. After a while, I fell asleep again. Until I heard some clattering of metal frames and frantic conversation. I slowly opened my eyes and looked around. I realized I was lying on the ambulance bed and being wheeled off the ambulance. Medical staff quickly took over and pushed me into the emergency room to treat my injuries. I felt a sharp pain and sensations of pain from various parts of my body. I knew my limbs were injured and bleeding, and my body was hooked up to various monitoring devices. They were concerned I might have internal bleeding or serious head injuries. While it seemed like just a mild concussion and some superficial wounds, they still recommended that I stay in the hospital for observation. That day, my bed was placed in a corner, and feeling dizzy and exhausted, I lay on the hospital bed to rest. The emergency room was chaotic, with complaints from patients' families and the groans of other patients. Amidst the cacophony, a beautiful voice caught my attention. It was the voice of a young woman humming a song. As the song seemed to approach me, it suddenly began to fade away. I wondered who was singing, and I tried to sit up to see. But I was gently restrained and told to lie flat. A nurse told me that I was in the emergency room of a hospital. I had been injured in a car accident and brought in by passers-by who called an ambulance. Initial observations didn't reveal anything serious, but there might be some concerns about my head, so it was best not to move around. After she settled me down, she continued to attend to other tasks. As I lay on the bed, I reflected on what had happened. Why did I get into a car accident? The night before, I was playing computer games with a friend, Li Zheng. Knowing he had to attend an off-campus event early the next morning, I promised to give him a ride to catch his bus. But we got so engrossed in the game that we didn't think much about it. He could rest on the tour bus, and I could go back to where I was staying and catch up on sleep. So, we ended up playing until 1 or 2 in the morning before going to bed. The next morning, before dawn, he woke me up to give him a ride to school. I dropped him off at school, and I noticed the tour bus was already waiting for him at the school gate. On my way back, riding alone on the familiar mountain road, I felt an eerie sense of desolation. During the day, there would usually be a few cars passing by, but at that moment, the road felt completely deserted. Not even the shadow of a car or even a cat or dog could be seen. As I passed a bend, I saw a woman. She was wearing a white short-sleeved shirt, and since the sun hadn't come up yet, the view was dim. I couldn't see clearly, but I saw her hair hanging down to her chest as she stood under a tree on the slope beside the ditch. The scene seemed frozen, like a painting. I thought it was over, and I had seen something I shouldn't have. So, I immediately pretended nothing had happened and continued on. I even deliberately accelerated and swerved into the opposite lane to avoid her, fearing she might do something to me. But as I was about to pass by her, she suddenly made a move that startled me. I caught a glimpse of her rushing towards the back of my motorcycle in my right eye. I tried to look for her in the rearview mirror to see her figure, but she had vanished without a trace. Suddenly, a chill ran down my spine, and when I quickly turned around, I found her sitting on the pillion seat of my motorcycle. Her hair fluttered in the wind, obscuring her face in shadows. Luckily, I couldn't make out any facial features. But right after that, I was on the ambulance. Now, lying on the bed, I felt my body shaking violently as I woke up. Breathing heavily, sweat soaked my back. The first thing I saw was a nurse holding a syringe, looking at me in horror. It turned out she was trying to hold my hand to give me an injection. Embarrassed, I wiped the sweat from my forehead and unknowingly wiped it on the bedsheet. After she finished injecting me, I couldn't bring myself to sleep anymore. Until they finished a series of tests and confirmed that I was okay, they let me go. As I passed by the emergency room again, the bed that looked normal to others seemed to me like a blood-stained bed. I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease whenever I thought back to that incident.